Hello, today we are going to discuss a case study involving vitamin D insufficiency. But first, a little bit about the background of the vitamin. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin that plays important roles in nuclear regulation and calcium homeostasis. Vitamin D can be consumed in the diet, synthesized by sunlight in the skin, or taken in a supplement form. Vitamin D deficiency is a common problem today and affects many people in the United States, including Matt. Matt is a 68-year-old white male living in Maine. He has a healthy weight for his height and does not use tobacco. Due to a past accident, Matt is wheelchair bound and spends most of his time indoors. A few years back, Matt discovered he was lactose intolerant. He decided to visit his dietitian since he was experiencing bone pain and wondered if it was related to a vitamin deficiency. His dietitian told him he is vitamin D insufficient, meaning he is not yet deficient, but he is at risk for becoming so. He's not getting enough vitamin D. Considering all the information, we will be discussing what path of treatment would be most effective in Matt's case. Sunlight therapy, dietary sources, or supplementation. First, we will be hearing from sunlight, then dietary sources, and finally supplementation.
According to the Harvard Health Publications article, Vitamin D and Your Health, Breaking Old Rules, Raising New Hopes, a number of factors can play a role in vitamin D deficiency, but limited exposure to sunlight heads the list. This, along with other added benefits, is why Ashley and I believe that proper sun exposure can be an effective treatment for Matt. When looking at the conversion of vitamin D from sunlight, we should point out that there is little to no chance of reaching toxic levels through this method. This is one of the biggest advantages to obtaining vitamin D through sunlight and is one of our major points that we will be discussing. As learned in lecture, non-dietary vitamin D in the body is known as 7-dehydrocholesterol. Upon exposure to light, the 7-dehydrocholesterol absorbs UVB radiation from the sun due to the conjugated bonds seen in it. This compound is then isomerized to pre-vitamin D3. The reason why there is little to no toxicity of vitamin D from the sun is because two other inactive metabolites along with pre-vitamin D3 are formed. They are called lumisterol and tachysterol and can help to regulate how much active vitamin D is eventually synthesized in the kidney. Lumisterol is produced from 7-dehydrocholesterol and UV light, while tachysterol is generated from further irradiation of pre-vitamin D3. Both of these, as well as pre-vitamin D3, do not have much affinity for vitamin D's main blood transport protein. In fact, they tend to be typically lost as the skin sloughs off, which is why there is no toxicity seen. Because the metabolites are constantly leaving the body, they do not have the potential to build up to harmful levels. If toxic levels were to build up, we could see a variety of other risk factors, including hypercalcemia. These risks can be caused by oversupplementation and excessive dietary ingestion of vitamin D, but not through sunlight. In fact, vitamin D is most likely of all vitamins to cause overt toxicity, so Matt needs to be careful at how much he is taking in. Fortunately, with casual exposure to sun, he won't have to worry about this. Ashley will now discuss what casual exposure is and the healthy limits that are recommended for vitamin D conversion.
As Angie stated, our body can produce vitamin D from the sun without reaching toxic levels. It should also be noted that we can receive all of our daily recommended amounts of vitamin D, which is 10 to 15 minutes of sun exposure. This is why vitamin D is known as the sunshine vitamin. Very few foods naturally contain vitamin D, and many, such as milk, must be fortified. According to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, more than 90% of vitamin D requirements for most people come from casual exposure to sunlight. It may be argued that because Matt is wheelchair bound and spends most of his time indoors, that he can't possibly get all of his vitamin D from the sun. However, this is not the case. Those 10 to 15 minutes do not have to be spent consecutively. They can be split up over the day. Also, as long as your face and hands are exposed, your body can use the UV rays from the sun to make vitamin D. Matt can simply meet his vitamin D requirements while running errands and getting his mail during the day. This is casual sun exposure. Conversion of UV rays from the sun to vitamin D is a great way for Matt to work on his vitamin D insufficiency.
Angie and Ashley just stated, Humans get most of their vitamin D from the action of sunlight in their skin. However, the Western lifestyle keeps many individuals inside and makes dietary vitamin D very important. Alex and I have found that dietary vitamin D, both from fortified and natural sources, is a safe and important method for incorporating enough vitamin D into the diet. Matt does not participate in many outdoor activities, and Maine is in the northern latitude, so he is prone to winters with very little sunlight. Dietary vitamin D will be a vital source for Matt. Animal sources such as fish, meat, offal, liver, egg, and dairy are the main sources for naturally occurring cholecalciferol, or vitamin D3. The content in muscle meat is generally much lower. Vitamin D concentrations in egg yolks range between the values for meat and offal. If milk and dairy products are not fortified, they are normally low in vitamin D, with the exception of butter because of its high fat content. Vitamin D also includes calciferol, vitamin D2, which is produced in fungi and yeast. Therefore, it's found in plants such as mushrooms. Matt may be lactose intolerant, but he can get plenty of vitamin D through both fish and eggs. The highest values of vitamin D are found in fish, especially the fish liver, so Maine can supply plenty of fish. Cooking does not really influence the vitamin D content of meat and dairy foods because the vitamin is rather heat and oxygen tolerant. The vitamin D3 concentration was 1 to 6% lower in 25-OH-D3, the inactive form, and was 6 to 11% lower after boiling when compared to raw eggs. For fish, there was a significant difference depending on the cooking method. There was a loss of about 50% when salmon was fried in vegetable oil, but not when it was baked. It is recommended that we eat 3 portions of dairy and 1 portion of meat, fish, or eggs per day. If we comply with these recommendations, we would get 3 micrograms, which would be dairy plus meat, or 7 micrograms, dairy plus eggs, or 49 micrograms, dairy plus fish per day. So globally, there's a general consensus that blood 25-OHD levels below or at 10 nanograms per milliliter qualify as deficient. But beyond that, there is currently no standard definition or agreement as to optimal 25-OHD levels. At 68 years old, Matt is recommended to intake 10 micrograms of vitamin D per day. This could easily be obtained by eating the recommended 3 portions of dairy, 1 portion of eggs and meat, or Matt could take the easy route and eat 1 portion of fish and 3 portions of dairy to go above and beyond his minimum needs. Vitamin D is essential for supporting healthy bones and preventing osteoporosis, which is important for a person of Matt's age. In summary, both Matt and many individuals in the U.S. can benefit from increasing natural sources of vitamin D since the Western diet and lifestyle are generally lacking in adequate vitamin D amounts.
As Carrie has just stated, natural vitamin D as well as the fortification of vitamin D in certain foods are effective ways for humans to receive adequate vitamin D in their diets. Although there is not many areas that offer a whole range of fortified foods, research into this area has increased and should be looked at as another solution for vitamin D deficiency. By fortifying foods with vitamin D, there's a better chance to increase the amount of cholecalciferol circulating in the human diet. In the U.S., the 2 biggest staple foods at the moment are fortified with vitamin D are milk and ready-to-eat cereals because fortifying vitamin D right now is only voluntary in the U.S. When foods are fortified with vitamin D, it is already in the form of cholecalciferol, making the absorption into the kidneys to create the active form of vitamin D more easy and more effective. A study found in the Journal of Science of Food and Agriculture took 162 eggs and fortified it with pre-vitamin D and large amounts of cholecalciferol. When testing the amount of vitamin D found in the eggs, those eggs that were fortified with 25-hydroxyvitamin D and only some pre-vitamin D were found to have eggs with levels of 100 to 500 IU vitamin D. As Carrie has already stated, eggs are already a great source of vitamin D and can be consumed by Matt as they are not a dairy source. Increasing the amount that is already found in this rich food would make eating an adequate amount of vitamin D easier in the case of our client. Fortification of vitamin D has been studied in many different countries already. It has found that fortifying foods with vitamin D has decreased the vitamin D deficiency throughout these areas, as well as increasing chances of reaching different populations that are already at low risk of vitamin D. A study performed in the UK where 1/5 of their population suffers from decreased vitamin D status due to low sun exposure, took wheat flour and milk as their fortification vehicles to see the change in the entire population's vitamin D status. They found that the population's winter serum of 20-hydroxy vitamin D concentrations rose from 20 to 27 nanomoles per liter. The overall vitamin D status in the high-risk populations decreased from 93% to 53% after vitamin D fortification. It was also found in this study that the wheat that they used was fortified with 10 micrograms of vitamin D per 100 grams, and increased the population's 25-hydroxy vitamin D serum concentration more than fortified milk. This study shows that not only can fortification of vitamin D have an impact on vitamin D status, but also that the wide variety of foods can be fortified. This information gives us the ability to reach all different populations at risk, cultural or socioeconomic, who cannot eat certain foods based on their religious preferences or afford supplementation. In conclusion, while there is still a lot of research that can be done on this study, the fortification of more foods would help Matt drastically in his vitamin D intake. As I've already stated, the fortification of wheat bread and already fortified ready-to-eat cereals would increase Matt's vitamin D status without having to consume dairy products that are rich in vitamin D.
Vitamin D supplements can often be the best way to increase your status, as very few foods are naturally rich in vitamin D. With the exception of fatty fish, vitamin D levels in food are very low, about 50 to 200 IUs per serving, even in fortified milk. Because of this, dietary sources are usually not enough to greatly improve one's status, especially in individuals with darker skin or are not exposed to enough sunlight. Recommended intake levels of vitamin D can generally be met for individuals who get enough dietary sources, sun exposure, and are not over the age of 65. However, for at-risk populations, supplementation is needed to reach adequate levels and prevent the onset of certain diseases. While excess vitamin D supplementation can lead to hypercalcemia, vitamin D toxicity is extremely rare and generally only occurs with large doses of 10,000 IUs per day or more for prolonged periods of time in patients with malabsorption disorders or in patients who may be receiving generous amounts of calcium supplements. The current RDA for individuals ages 1 to 70 is 600 IUs daily and then 800 IUs daily for individuals over the age of 70. A research study through the Mayo Clinic on vitamin D deficiency in adults found that supplementation with 800 to 1,000 IUs daily of vitamin D, or 50,000 IUs monthly, is safe for most people and can ensure levels of vitamin D within the optimal range. Therefore, the addition of appropriate doses of vitamin D supplements should be considered as treatment for those with vitamin D deficiency to prevent the onset of certain diseases.
A study conducted by the EMGO Institute for Healthcare Research at WVU University Medical Center tested the effectiveness of sunlight exposure compared to vitamin D supplementation in a randomized clinical trial with vitamin D deficient non-Western immigrants. There were 232 total participants ranging from the ages of 16 to 65 years old. The participants were either assigned supplementation of 800 IU daily or 100,000 IU for 3 months, or assigned sunlight exposure for 6 months between the months of March and September. The study was administered during 6 months between March and September because these are the months where sunlight results in vitamin D synthesis in the skin at the latitude of the Netherlands where the study took place. Data and blood samples were also collected at baseline, during treatment at 6 months and 3 months, and during the follow-up period at 12 months as well. The study found baseline blood samples of 25-hydroxy vitamin D to be 22.5 nanomoles per liter. After 6 months, mean serum levels of 25-hydroxy vitamin D increased to 53 nanomoles with 800 IU a day and to only 29.1 nanomoles with advised sunlight exposure. We can conclude from this study that vitamin D supplementation is more effective in treating vitamin D deficiency than sunlight exposure alone.
Based on our findings and research, we can conclude that vitamin D supplementation is the best method of treatment for vitamin D deficiency But what form? According to the Vitamin D Council, it does not matter if the supplementation is in the form of capsule, tablet, or liquid. The concerning question is if D3 or D2 is the most effective. According to veganhealth.org and the Mayo Clinic, the answer is D3. Vitamin D3, or cholecalciferol, is derived from animals. In large boluses of 50,000 IU or more, vitamin D3 is much more effective than D2 at raising and maintaining vitamin D levels. Even in daily amounts of 1,000 to 4,000 IU per day of vitamin D3, it is still shown to be better than D2 at raising overall vitamin D levels. This could be contributed to the long half-life D3 has. Therefore, a person needs less frequent doses to sustain adequate levels. In the case of Matt, a lower dose or less frequent dose of vitamin D would be the best since he is not severely deficient. Supplementation would be the best route since he does not spend a lot of time outside and lack of sun exposure is not easily corrected by dietary sources. Older adults also tend to have decreased food intake, which also supports the supplementation route of treatment. Matt needs to make sure he is getting a sufficient amount of vitamin D due to his risk factors, such as the fact that he's over 65 and he has been experiencing bone pain. The fact that he is lactose intolerant is also worth mentioning, since his insufficient levels of vitamin D can impair his absorption of calcium and lead to bone loss, and he already may not be getting enough calcium through his diet.
In conclusion, for Matt's specific case, and drawing from the information provided, we can agree that supplementation seems to be the best course of treatment for his vitamin D insufficiency. Sunlight is effective if you're outside during the summer months, but Matt lives in Maine and has inadequate exposure to sunlight year-round. Additionally, he's wheelchair bound and he doesn't get outside a lot, so sunlight would not be a viable option for treatment for his vitamin D insufficiency. Dietary intake can also be a viable option for many people, and even though Matt lives in Maine, which has a lot of access to vitamin D rich fish, we have to take into account his dietary habits. He's a 68-year-old man that may not want to change his lifelong patterns of eating. So in this way, dietary intake might also not be a viable option for treatment. So in conclusion, we can agree that vitamin D3 supplementation is the best option for treating Matt's insufficiency. This way, Matt is guaranteed to have sufficient intake and improve his levels by taking the supplements every day. So, as future dietitians, how would you help Matt?